This is the Fifth Estate winning headlines, your media police post. In this segment, we summarize some of the headlines that you might have missed this morning. But we also take a look at the political pieces that we call cartoons in this country. Today is the 10th of September 2019, and I am 2J.
I am 2M.
And I am GK. And in case you missed the headlines, here they are. In the Star, MPs accuse state of crucifying them for backing RUTO. In the Daily Nation, Uhuru caught up in Raila-RUTO battle for Kibra.
Yes.
In the Standard, secret plot to force teachers into polls.
Yes.
Guys, firstly, welcome back, TJ.
Thank you.
Welcome back from Mogadishu.
I had a great time.
How's Mogadishu?
Fantastic.
Did you fight? Did you start firing AKs and Kalashnikovs?
How stereotypical of you.
But of course I did.
There are people they carry guns in markets.
Anyway, let's start with the nation.
Yeah.
Uhuru caught up in Raila-RUTO battle for Kibra.
Yeah. Am I the only one who's tired of this story right now?
You see, I find this very speculative.
Yeah.
But I also want to ask these nation editors, do they think that Jubilee, whose leader is Uhuru Kenyatta, fielded a candidate without the consent of Uhuru Kenyatta?
Well, obviously, that's what they'd want us to believe. So I think, I agree with you. With the speculation at this point, I think we just need to let the story die until there's more concrete information.
Yes, it is like saying Sifuna chose Imran Okoth because he did not get concurrence from Raila Odinga.
And I think, and I think the idea is that the assumption here is that because of the handshake, politics died. Yeah, politics is competition.
Absolutely.
It's healthy. You know, they're both of different parties at the end of the day, and they are entitled to field different candidates.
Absolutely.
True.
Absolutely.
So on that note, we are tossing.
Absolutely.
Well, what's our criteria?
Oh yes, we have a 3-part criteria that we use to break down the headlines before we toss them prematurely. We ask ourselves whether the headline is topical or speculative. We also ask ourselves whether it is repetitive or groundbreaking. And then we ask whether it is thoughtful or just plain lazy.
So much speculation, so lazy, so boring.
Absolutely.
And then in the Star, we have MPs accuse state of crucifying them for backing RUTO. And this is after events of the weekend.
Yes, absolutely.
Between Kamanda and
Ndindi Nyoro.
Yes.
Yeah, and look, for all intents and purposes, I think from looking from outside, there is an implosion in Jubilee. But I think it is something that can be salvaged. And you see, guys, Uhuru Kenyatta has such charm. And I hear he even enters enemy territory and his enemies just melt. and I think he has a perfect opportunity to rein back this descent that's happening in Gema. In Gema. And all he has to do, in my view, is just have a bash at State House, have a line full of nyamachoma and all the booze he can get.
Yeah, there's strength in unity, there's strength in Gema staying together.
Absolutely.
However, it feels like we're also now building on the whole assassination narrative story that, you know, there's a plot, because inside the story...
They said they had a meeting until 1 a.m. and discussed a plan on how to kick.
Yes.
You're out. I don't know.
Absolutely.
RUTO allied.
But some of these RUTO allies should even just tone down. They're talking about assassination like it's child's play.
Like it's normal.
Yeah, I think that kind of tone should.
And I also think, I mean, in the run up to the next election, we have how many days? Less 1,000?
Less than 1,000. Yeah.
Yes, I mean, succession conversations are inevitable.
Absolutely.
But must they always take on that draconian tone?
No.
I will say, at the end of the day, I applaud RUTO and the president for not speaking on any of these things. So right now you have all the little children running around wild, you know, creating headlines, doing crazy things. And our leaders are keeping hush.
On that note,
we're tossing it, right?
Yes.
In the Standard, the secret plot to force teachers into polls. So the nut, socio troubles continue.
They continue. But I've told you guys, if there's no corruption, and you've noticed this entire week and last week, those corruption stories were very few, maybe except for Sonko. But if there's none of that, then it's education.
Yes.
Now, they're telling us that NAT officials are fighting for their jobs because they have met
the retirement age.
And they're refusing to go. she let them fight it amongst themselves.
But I also think Sosion took on Magoha and Capet.
Absolutely.
So I think he's also seeing
the repercussions of that.
Yeah. And it's one thing to say, I mean, Magoha must be very Machiavellian. He has this thing called CBC. If it has to carry through, then you get rid of any hindrances and hurdles.
And he's doing it by force.
And any change, any great change is never linear, it's never easy.
Absolutely.
It has to go through.
Yeah, so this one to the bin as well.
Of course. I think the Standard was really pulling at strings to put a story together here. This story did not make sense. It didn't.
Absolutely.
So no winning headlines, but onto our political pieces that we call cartoons in this country. Here we have a 3-part criteria that we use to break down the cartoons. We ask ourselves whether it is humorous or dry, whether it is satirical or pessimistic, and whether it is effective or just plain lazy.
So the nation.
Victor Ndula.
You have a priest in the ring, and he's about to announce who the next fighter is. On one corner is Kieleweke, the next one is Tanga, right? And the caption there is "Let's get ready to rumble," and this is because of the current fights that we saw during the weekend, Commander and Dede Nyoro, and this has happened before in churches. Literally, the church has become the venue, the arena of political fights.
And we must keep these spaces as sanctified. I mean, you're going there for inspiration, to be edified. You don't want to hear people's egos at play, which is essentially what that fight was. It was
That's true.
A fight of egos.
But even now, like a person who is not a good worshipper would go to even Nanga's church to watch him abuse them.
Nanga's followers, let's leave them out of this. That's a special group of people. I quite like it.
I do actually. I think in the parking bay.
Topical, it's pretty effective.
Absolutely.
Let's see what
we have. No Gado today. We have
Gamzo. I think Gamzo has drawn a happy birthday card. Cake. Sorry. It's a cake, Jubilee cake, and it's been cut into 2. And the knife that has cut it is called Uhuru Succession. I don't like it.
I think it's very pessimistic. I think that's my problem with it.
He's trying to say Uhuru Succession has divided Jubilee into 2 factions.
I think this narrative really needs to end. It's not inspiring for the nation. Can we toss that?
Very far.
All right.
Caricature, Ozone. Caricature of Dindi Nyoro in hot soup. And
hot brown soup.
And next to him is a hot fist. I mean, no, it's not a hot fist. A fist clenching a spoon.
An iron fist.
An iron fist. So he's part of it. The iron fist wants to eat him as well.
You're describing this terribly.
Yes, but next to on the left of Dindi Nyoro's soup bowl is James Orengo.
Yes.
And James Orengo is actually on record. There's a clip going round of him telling the Jubilee side, and this
in 2017.
In 2017, that the government will clamp down harder on you than it will on me.
In a year's time.
And I remember him saying revolutions eat their own children. And I mean, I think his thing has come to pass. Look who's on the frying pan now. Look who's on the soup bowl now.
Being attacked by the Iron Fist. I think it's a good cartoon.
I think it's a very
However,
good
if I had to decide between the Star and the Nation, I would go with Ndula.
Yeah, I go with Nation as well.
I think it's very funny. I think it's topical. I don't like it.
I don't like all of them, but because you like 2 of you like it.
So there we go. The Nation Ndula gives us our winning cartoon.
Absolutely.
What is our final thought?
And now our final thought. Inspired by a book entitled The Age of Chaos. The Age of Chaos. Why Democracy is Failing to Deliver Economic Growth. And it's by Dambisa Moyo.
The state wave.
Absolutely.
Exactly. So this is the second Dambisa Moyo book, I believe, that we've looked at. As you said, The Edge of Chaos. Why Democracy is Failing to Deliver Economic Growth. However, you missed the last bit because she does ... how to fix it.
Oh, fantastic.
So this book was written in 2018, so it's quite recent. And I think as we all know right now, Dambisa Moyo is a Zambian-born, prize-winning economist, author of Dead Aid, Winner Takes It All. She did her master's at Harvard and got a PhD at Oxford. So in this book, she argues that the greatest challenge of our time is creating sustained economic growth that can meaningfully impact people's lives every day.
Absolutely.
And she says that the public and politicians are very short-sighted and that we choose economic policies that will produce long-term prosperity. We fail to do so. And so she says the fundamental enemy of growth and and democracy is short-termism. That's what she terms it. That we look for self-gratification in the moment rather than thinking about how these policies could help us in the long run.
It's called the microwave mentality.
We
want success.
You pop it in quickly. You don't want to cook it.
Yes.
With
And
love.
millennials are guilty of it.
That is so true.
Yes.
So in this book, she outlines 7 issues that she terms hurricane headwinds that are driving social and economic unrest and are creating barriers to inclusive growth. So growth that includes every person in society.
Absolutely.
So these 7, I'll just go through very quickly. She talks about high debt, natural resource scarcity, misallocation of capital, demographics, inequality, technological innovation, and declining productivity.
Right.
And I think that of these 7, there are a few that I would say apply to Africa as just generally. Because I think this book is very Western.
It's very Western.
Yeah, we know who her audience is.
Yeah.
She's actually in the process of trying to get U.S. citizenship. So,
and she actually does say, you know, when I give my recommendations, these are for mature democracies. And so when you think of
we're immature.
Emerging countries are sort of going through nascent type democracy.
So I think the 4 that I think apply very well to us are high debt, natural resource scarcity, misallocation of capital, and demographics. So I think together we can put high debt and misallocation of capital. And I think that Kenya currently is a very prime example of that. We have very high debt. You said our debt to GDP is
about 56%.
56%. And there's a Harvard research study that was done that says that by the time you hit 60%, you're most likely going to see 2% decrease in growth.
Absolutely.
And I think that we might be approaching that. And I think that when you couple that with misallocation of capital, I think you're beginning to see how those factors are beginning to show themselves. However, with the national resource scarcity, I think that we are quite the opposite. I think that the West is having this problem where they're not having a lot of natural resources to tap into, and so they come and they look for us. Look at Congo.
They bill for it.
However, I think our problem is that we've not found a way to capitalize and use those resources that God has given us.
Absolutely.
So I think that once we tap into that, I think that we'll be flying high.
And I think there you're looking at how Africa integrates into the global system. So you find that usually we have our raw materials leave, and then they come back. They come back and are sold to
as high value goods.
So unless we integrate better into that system, we'll find ourselves in that cycle.
It's funny you say that, because I was seeing some statistics. Africa trades within itself, other than the rest of the world, 16% only. Just 16. The amount of trade we do within ourselves is just 16% of the global trade we do with the rest of the world. So it tells you we actually need to look more inwardly into ourselves.
But which is why the Africa Trade Agreement is going to be so crucial. Should it kick in?
And I think that taps into the last one we want to talk about, demographics. So when you look at the West, they have a very huge aging population, and so you have a lot of people who are leaving the workforce, are retiring. So there's not a lot of people who are able to spur the economy. Whereas Africa, we have this demographic dividend where we have a high amount of youth. I think 60% of Africa's population is under the age of 25 years old. However, we have this problem whereby we're unable to absorb them into the economy. We either don't have enough jobs for them, or they're not skilled enough to actually, participate. And so I think that the question that we would want to ask with this book is, does economic growth equal less inequality? Or even, is democracy necessary to achieve growth? And I think that in this book she argues right now that democracy is failing to address these headwinds, these 7 things that she sees. But I would also ask that, why is democracy seen as the answer to prosperity? I don't think that should be the first assumption. And I think we have lots of countries like China proving that democracy is not necessary.
What I hear her say to the West is, stick to your lane. Democracy has gotten you this far. Yes, it is slowing down. But for you to fix it, these are the structural adjustments that you need to put in place. But then in the same breath, she also says, if democracy has worked for you, it may not have worked for others. And those that are using another model, like the Chinese, have succeeded better than you in one generation. And then she says this, and she quotes, let me quote her. She says, many aspects of how the Chinese political class manages its economy are antithetical to the Western values of democracy and free markets. Then she says, China, it took just one generation for the Chinese to alleviate 300 million people from poverty. That has never been done by the West. Yes, and it is because of this. Chinese have their own definition of a system called meritocracy. So they have a system called selection plus election. Now, from the provinces down there, they do their elections, okay? But when you get to what they call the Standing Committee of the Politburo, and that is the Chinese Communist Party, those leaders, the only party, they choose 6-7 leaders that have excelled in these provinces to lead amongst them. Now, if you have going and now they link the Politburo to the people, and those guys have a couple of objectives. It's very simple. The first objective is why is it? Yes, they have a criteria, and it's based on poverty eradication, job creation, local economic growth, and social development. Just that part of criteria. The rest will come, and they know once they're able to trickle down their ethos and their objectives to the people, the Chinese economy will grow like nothing
And so the
else.
point with the Chinese version of meritocracy is that if you are able to provide all those things, the poverty elevation, education, whatnot, then you are able to move into the higher ranks of government. So you prove that you're able to do your job, and then you're rewarded with a better position.
So you have state capitalism at its best when you see China.
Yes, absolutely.
However, there you must question growth at the expense of other freedoms. Right? So yes, we can focus on economic growth, but there are liberties that I have here in Africa, there in America or the UK that I could never have in China. So I think there's a balance to be struck. Right?
Absolutely.
So, and is it one at the expense of the other?
Absolutely.
But I would say one thing I would say about her book is that she paints a very bleak picture of the state of the world, West or otherwise. And I think it reminded me of Factfulness, where they talk about in the book that the world is actually in a better position than you would have, you'd have yourself
Things
believe.
Are not as bad
as they seem. And
so
I think we would need to critically look at that.
So Dambisa gives us a thoughtful conversation on democracy and whether it's working. And at the Fort Hall School of Government, we also had a publication a year ago, I think, on the elasticity of democracy. And here we looked at an 8-country study of how democracy is working in the continent. And whether, as it's practiced, is it working for us? And so I think we build on that as well. So she has 10 reforms that she has in the book. I won't go through all 10. But she does say that binding government, i.e. making sure that the short-term nature of policy making is eradicated.
Absolutely.
And so she says you need to put a high hurdle so that you changing a policy, so your successor comes, they don't just change what you had implemented, but building on a trajectory of development, right? And then she says campaign financing. She recommends that there be tighter restrictions on how financing at election time is done.
I'd like to see how that works here.
Exactly, because according to in Kenya, the Campaign Financing Act, political parties can receive up to 15 billion shillings. From a single individual, you can receive up to 3 billion shillings.
Billion with a B.
With a B. Which means that, I mean, in terms of influencing elections, policy, and especially in the era of Kenya's tenderpreneur.
I
mean, our electoral cycles and entrepreneurs are really linked. If you want to be anyone and anything in this country, you have to have your hand in politics. You must be. In the US, she mentions super PACs, but super PACs are able to, they have to tell you what their interest would be. So they state up front. In Kenya, there's no legal obligation
to disclose that.
To disclose any of that information. However, the question still remains, does capping contribution mean better policy or growth outcomes?
I don't think
so. And so there I sort of felt like she didn't make a solid argument. The other thing she proposes, so that we move from the edge of chaos in our democracies, is to pay politicians better. And the idea here is to reduce the rent-seeking nature of politicians. Now, we have Kenyan MPs who are some of the highest paid in the world. However, when a study was done, we realized they actually weren't even legislating as much. So even just the job that you should do, you're not doing. But yet you're highly paid. So she says, pay better. Then she says, lengthen political terms. Now here I thought of Rwanda. Rwanda, Kagame has 7-year terms. Well, not Kagame. Anyone who would be a president in Rwanda has the option of having a 7-year term. But also it matches with their 7-year government program. And the idea there is that you have time to implement some of the things that you have set out to do. And so you reduce the nature of that. I don't have to be accountable to my electorate because I'll be out in 5 years.
I think that's the one I agree with the most.
And then she says, but on the other hand, there must be an imposition of term limits. Now here I don't agree, because the UK doesn't have term limits for its Prime Minister.
And for the Queen.
You can leave the Queen out of this whole week. But a Prime Minister in the UK can have 5-year unlimited terms. Italy has 7-year unlimited terms.
Yeah.
So in my mind, why are we being imposed upon certain restrictions when some of the world's stable democracies don't have?
That's very true.
The other thing which I thought was really interesting was she said there should be mandatory voting.
Yes.
So we must expand the voting base. And in order to do this, she says imposing fines.
Yes.
So Australia says if you don't have a good enough reason,
we fine you.
You fine you.
And they have 90% turnout on voting day, which I think is incredible.
But she says if you expand the voting base, then you're better off in terms of people not being held hostage by few people who are making these decisions.
Absolutely.
And her most controversial in my mind is weighting voters. So basically, depending on what your profession is, how much you earn,
educational qualifications,
it determines how weighty your vote is. Now, it reminded me of a political economist called Henry Hazlitt, who said, if you don't vote, if you don't pay taxes, you don't get to vote. So it's a bit controversial, given that, civil rights movements have happened, suffragette movements have happened to fight for all our rights to vote. So those are some of the things she was proposing, so that we can remove ourselves from the chaos that's democracy.
As much as I respect Dambisa Moyo as a strong African woman who has been able to captivate the West with her ideas, I do think that she has a lot of contradictory thoughts in her head, and I think that she panders to the West, as you said. So I think that of those, she calls it a blueprint for democracy or whatnot. I think a lot of it is based for how the West is going to solve their problems, not so much as how we're going to solve our own.
As Africans.
And coming from that, by the way, as much as our audience is the West, I do think there are things that we can learn from this.
Oh, definitely.
Because that if the West had a political template of how to make and to ensure economic growth is at a certain level, that's worked for them. Chinese have meritocracy, selection plus election. The problem is with us is this: every constitutional making cycle, when they're bringing political people to create constitution and lawyers, you see 4 or 5 white faces there. Do you see black faces, when they're making constitutions in America or in Hungary or in Italy? It is because we lack some self-confidence to give ourselves a constitution that focuses on our own reality.
I think we need to own our culture and our ideals.
Absolutely.
Amen.
So
on a day that we didn't have any winning headlines, we did have a winning cartoon from Gila of the Daily Nation. I want to leave you with this. As Africa grapples with this democracy that we've been given, I think the key is to redefine it.
Absolutely.
What is democracy for us, and how should we apply it? Do we want longer terms? Do we want shorter terms? It's up to us, not what we've been told.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yes.
So please subscribe to our channel. And also you can find us on TV. We are on Pang, free to air, Go TV, and Star Times. Have a good evening and see you tomorrow.
Bless.